Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with Season 9, Episode 41 of our weekly Q&A content. It is a video if you're on YouTube. It is a podcast if you are on one of the podcasting platforms that we've uploaded it to. The form and shape of it is dictated by the vessel it is being held in.
The vessel.
It's like a fluid, right?
Yes.
You pour water into a cup. Is the water cup shaped? And then you pour it into a bowl, and this is the water. So this
when
piece
it's liquid.
This piece of content is both video shaped and podcast shaped, depending on where you're looking at it.
We are kings of two media.
Yeah. And if you're on YouTube, links in the description to access this on podcasting platforms. We've got a lot of cool stuff to talk about this week.
Yes.
We have sort of two off-topic things.
Yes.
I think maybe I'm going to talk about an off-topic thing quick.
Yes.
You'll talk about an off-topic thing quick, and then we'll get into a really cool thing,
Yes.
which is, spoiler alert, a sort of more in-depth understanding of how the battle points are calculated and team power for online matchmaking.
Right.
And there'll also be a link in the description that we highly recommend you check out to like the full sort of information, because this is not something that we figured out ourselves. We're just going to be talking about a really cool development that somebody else did.
It's amazing injustice scholarship is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have another game recommendation for people. This one does cost money. It's called Neon White, and I know this was very popular. It was one of like the, I think, nominees for like Game of the Year for Indie.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if it won or not. I didn't really pay attention, but I played it. I played it with my friends. And I say with my friends, it's impressive because it's a single player game, and it is spectacular. It is a game about going through these little sort of maps, and you are fighting demons. So it sounds like it would be a sort of action fighting game.
Right.
You're picking up guns and shooting demons, but it turns out that what it really is a movement speedrunning game, sort of wrapped in the trappings of like a first-person shooter, wearing a first-person shooter like a skin suit. And so what it is that you pick up these cards, and the cards are like guns, and so every card has a different fire mode, and then there's something you can do where you right-click it and you discard the card and you use it for some kind of mobility instead. It has a primary fire, which is sort of shooting bullets, and has a secondary fire, which is tossing the gun to do something cool with movement. And so like one of them is like a assault rifle kind of thing where it goes brrr, right? Has a fast fire rate, and the right mouse button drops a big purple sort of grenade on the ground that sticks to things, and then if it blows up near an enemy, it'll damage or kill the enemies. And if it blows up near you, it'll launch you into the air. And so the game starts out kind of simple. You're just trying to find the way to the exit while killing all of the demons. And what's really satisfying about it is it asks you, and it really makes it easy for you to improve your time and figure out how to get better. And so on some levels, it's just doing a better job to get through a little bit faster. You save like half a second, a quarter of a second, whatever, here and there. And then on some levels, the way that you first complete it, the way that sort of feels natural to you, bears almost no resemblance to the final route that you have to take through it. Right. And so there's, medals of increasingly high difficulty that you need to hit to, and some of them you need to hit to progress. You need to get, there's sort of like bronze, silver, gold, and then ace. And you need a gold or an ace medal to like get like a reward for that level. And you need a certain number of rewards for every set of stages to unlock the next set. Right. So you need a certain number of gold or ace medals. But then there's like, leaderboards, and you can compete with your friends. And so when I say I played this with my friends, I meant that we spent multiple like sit down sessions where we were just playing separately, but at the same time, and like trying to one up each other's times and whatever else. And it's got this really great sense of speed. it
So when you say playing together, in the same way that people are sometimes telling us that they're listening to this while they're playing Injustice at the same time, it's not like it's not an activity that requires it, but they're enjoying it that way.
It's actually something called parallel play, which is where two people are engaging. They're sort of sharing a space. They're socializing, but not directly with each other. You are sort of bonding via just doing stuff in the same space.
It's the way that you can feel as close to somebody by just being in the same room and maybe doing two separate activities, but at the same time.
Yeah.
So I could be reading, you could be watching TV or something, and that would be, it would feel like doing something together. Yeah.
So, it is exceptional. There is, I have one friend who is really good at this kind of thing. He likes doing speed runs and stuff, and he, as I suspected, tore through the game, and he got like the best medal. He beat all of our times on every single stage, and just like really worked on the lines. He'd play like one stage for like an hour, and I'm like a lot more casual with it. So but grinding out like medals and better times with him, and just figuring out the lines and treating it like a little puzzle where he went, oh, if you do this in this order, can you go a little faster? How do you get from A to B with the maximum possible speed? And it is really satisfying. It's a brain tickling puzzle, because there's the first sort of puzzle of how do you get there. There's a second puzzle of how do you get there fast enough to get sort of the thumbs up from the game to move on from this. And then after that, there's like the sort of push to make a line that can save like 10 or 20 seconds off of a stage that's like not very long. So a lot of the stages are only like 30 seconds, 40 seconds long. And, I'll go to one and I'm playing it, and my friend is like, I beat it for the first time, and then I look at the leaderboard and I see that I'm like a couple seconds behind most of my friends who played it. And then my one friend is like another 15 seconds ahead of us. And so everybody else is at like 35 seconds, and he's at somehow 20 seconds. And I'm like, how do you cut the amount of time this takes almost in half? I don't even know. And so you have to just be sort of, you have to look at it and go, is this possible? And it's cool because the game really encourages that, but it gives you all of the tools. So there's kind of successive layers of puzzles and mastery.
So when you say that, you know what comes to mind?
What?
Angry Birds.
Like 3-starring Angry Birds?
Right. So, in the... Yeah, exactly like that, like the scoring.
But I think it's a lot less... It feels a lot less frustrating and arbitrary, because it's really responsive. It's really easy to sort of...
to figure it out.
It's not always easy to do what you want to do, because sometimes you go, I think I could save a 1/10 of a second by doing this absolutely perfect shot where I'm like, I jump out of a window, and then there's like a like a 1/10 of a second where I can shoot this guy instead of running past him and shooting him. I can shoot him as he sort of flashes by in the window. And so it's not always easy, because stuff like that, you can screw up a lot very easily. But it's a very responsive and relatively forgiving game in terms of controls and movement. So if you're playing a level over and over again, it's because you are pushing yourself to do something that you can barely do. It's not because the game is clunky and it's not responding to you in the way that you want it to.
Do you ever remember playing GoldenEye on the Nintendo 64?
I don't believe I ever did. I think
okay. So that was me. So that was at one point we had a Nintendo 64. You used to play Kirby a lot. Yeah. And I would play Kirby too, but I would play GoldenEye. Yeah. And there was a way to play it too, where to sort of finish it instead of just finishing it. There's another level where you could get, I can't remember what the ranking was, but it would be speed runs. Yeah. And there would be some screens where the speed run would be like, I don't know, like 19 seconds or something. And you'd have to get through fast enough. Like, so there weren't any secrets. Like, it was basically you had to do it, but you had to do it so fast.
There are secrets in GoldenEye, though. There's one of the things is GoldenEye speedrunning is actually a pretty vibrant community. And there's some levels that are like only a couple seconds long, because what you do is like, I've watched a speedrunning video of it, and what you have to do is like look up at a certain like pixel and then throw like a grenade, and then it like kills one of the enemies across the map that you're supposed to be taking out and stuff. So there's like, there are some really like elaborate things if you
there were maybe two at most 3 screens that I just never finished, and then it was not my cartridge, so then I lost all that progress I'd made. But okay, so maybe it was. Maybe I just didn't get far enough to realize it, because most of them you could just, as long as you got fast enough, you got good enough at it.
That's like the speedrunning times built into the game don't make you do anything ridiculous. But there's like a separate thing where people just try to push it down as much as possible as like the speedrunning community.
Right.
And so Neon White is so much fun to play. It's got an incredibly cheesy, sort of goofy, a little bit like sort of like cringy like writing style, but it's very self-aware, and it manages to be endearing in moments. It's kind of how we felt about that Will Ferrell Ryan Reynolds Christmas movie Spirited. Where it was kind of goofy and silly and whatever, and if it took itself too seriously it wouldn't have been good. But it kind of knows what it is. So when it's kind of ridiculous and goofy and cringy, it still manages to land and be a little charming in it some of the time. But anyways, so that's my game recommendation. Highly recommend it.
So this is sort of it's not even a book recommendation so much as it is a book anticipation. So way back when, we used to do way more unboxings and book reviews. One of the book reviews that we did was on Martha Wells. She is a writer who done a lot of great fantasy, some science fiction. She'd done, I think, an official. She had done an official Star Wars novel too. So she's quite capable moving within the speculative fiction, or spec fic as we call it, world. And she had a lull in her career, and I think she's admitted or has said publicly at the time that she was really evaluating whether her career as a writer was viable or not. Writing is difficult at the best of times. I think there's, the extremes where you have wildly successful writers who are making millions, like the bestsellers, like J.K. Rowling, Stephen King,
George R. R. Martin.
Right. And there's a much larger group who are successful. They write great books.
Yeah.
They have big fan followings, but they don't sell enough books that they... Well, all right, so there's a small group that can make a living at it, but they don't sell enough books to be really rich or anything, right?
Yeah. It's like the artist middle class. The same thing with like a lot of like YouTubers and like streamers.
Absolutely.
Where there's like the really, like there's like the 1% that are just so massive that have like more money than anybody.
Right.
And then there's a lot of people who you've never heard of who have dedicated enough fan base that they're doing well enough for themselves. And
you see it across any kind of creative endeavor, I think, too, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's, you mentioned YouTube, there's writing, there's musicians, all that. I think all of it works like that when you're really hustling to...
It's like the middle class majority, but most people are actually in that middle size.
Right.
It's just that the huge people are kind of like household names.
Right.
So everybody knows them, and there's like, 100,000 or whatever the number of people required to be fans of them for them to make their living off of it. There's only that many people who are fans of like the people who are making it but not huge.
So Martha Wells, she just had announced that there was this new science fiction novella she was doing.
Yeah.
And at that time, my brain was in a space where I was better able to read a lot more fiction.
Yeah.
And so this channel has given us so much, right? We've said this before, our chance to go to YouTube studios, to meet a lot of really interesting people who were watching our videos.
Yeah.
To just do a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those was, because we were doing reviews and unboxings, I could reach out to publicists, or I guess marketing managers at different publishers, and if there's a book coming up that I thought was interesting, I could ask them for copy. I mean, I can do a link to all the book reviews we've done before, but one of the books that I wanted was Martha Wells' All Systems Red. It was this new series, or this new novella. It wasn't even a series yet, but it was this new novella she was doing about this murder bot. It was a cyborg that the idea was really interesting, and we reviewed it and we put it up, and little did we know, I mean, all those years ago, this was a renaissance or career of Martha Wells' career, because it went on to win 2 of the major awards, the Hugo Nebula for Best Novella of the Year. Mm-hmm. She was able to sell a bunch more books, or maybe it was already sold, I don't know. But once it was that successful, they released it as hardcovers and not just paperbacks.
Yeah.
The novel in the series won both the Hugo Nebula, and the series won the Hugo, I think, for Best Series too. So it's hugely successful. It's revitalized her career completely. in the science fiction spec fic world, she's very much a household name now. Even if you don't read science fiction fantasy, you might not know about her. But in that world, she's become hugely popular. Mm-hmm. And so she's making a return to fantasy after really reestablishing her career. It's called Witch King. It's coming out in, I believe, May. And I reached out to her publisher, and they're going to send us a copy. I don't think they have advanced reading copies. At least they said they didn't have any now, and they're going to send something before it was released. But I think we might just be getting the regular trade hardcover. But instead of waiting until the release date, they're going to send it to us a little bit early. Exciting. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think her writing is very accessible. I've loved her writing from the very beginning, but what really got me was her fantasy. So it's really exciting to me that she's going back to her fantasy roots, so to speak, and it's coming out soon. And this time around, there's going to be a huge audience waiting for it. And, you know, to me, it's almost like when we talk about watching a show or doing something when everybody else is doing it, there's that conversation that can happen, as a lot of people are experiencing for the first time. That's really kind of neat, and I'm looking forward to
there's
that.
A discourse separate from the media. So that's cool. That's very exciting. Now you, the listener, have sort of eaten your veggies. You've listened to us talk about things that are unrelated to what you came to this channel for. Maybe you've stuck around because you like listening to us talk, and in that case, that's good. You know, maybe you just happen to really like broccoli and Brussels sprouts. But now, we get to talk about some really cool stuff that's going on in Injustice.
And we need to give credit where it's due in both ways. So why don't you read? You want to read the comment?
Yeah. So Cameron107, friend of the show, frequent commenter, sent us a message that we're really glad we got. It was a comment. They said, slightly off topic, but I was wondering if you guys saw this post on the Injustice Mobile subreddit by user mtgy425 about online matchmaking. It basically offers a formula on how to calculate, quote, team power, as they call it, which is basically threat level in Injustice 2, and it dives into how the matchmaker works in general. Apparently, damage/health increasing passives don't affect matchmaking at all, so the game doesn't factor in stats gained by the passives in Injustice 2, Superman, Arkham Origins, Deathstroke, Red Sun, Grundy, etc. However, support cards and damage/health augments do count. I can't link the post here, but I highly recommend checking it out, blah, blah, blah. So basically, huge thank you to Cameron for letting us know, but we have to give like an absolute massive kudos to mtgy425.
They've got a different handle on YouTube. You know what? I'm going to look it up and put it in the description because I forgot to make a note on that. But they have a slightly different user handle on YouTube. And they've got a channel. They've got some interesting videos. I think they've done a Survivor completion, but the newer one where there's more... Okay.
Yeah, and also apparently they commented it on our channel with a link, but the YouTube spam filter cut it out. But we now have a full, in-depth breakdown of not only how it works, but like how to use it to your advantage. And so we'll link their channel in the description. We'll also link the Reddit thread, which is sort of like a preface in a Google Doc. With all the information. This is like a really wildly in-depth, high-effort bit of Injustice scholarship.
Yes,
that I think
scholarship is the right word.
Yeah, it's a research paper. And you know what I'll say? I have like a background in university where I had to read a lot of research papers, and this is laid out more clearly with everything minus the methodology which they have withheld for exploit reasons. They don't want sort of somebody else using the similar methods to exploit it, but everything minus that. I've read research papers that were less clearly outlined with less clear implications. I've read worse published scientific literature than this. This is like it's a work of art.
So the meta conversation around this, I want to point out that Cameron 107 sort of hints at is that I want to address is that we don't always look on the subreddit, and if we look every few weeks, it's easy to miss something like this where, I mean, lots of people commented, but it wasn't even one of the highest sort of rated threads. So it ended up dropping down and getting buried so that when I came back, I missed it completely. So I really appreciate Cameron pointing this out because without this, it would have just flown right past our radar. Yeah. Because nobody was talking about it enough.
Yeah. And so one of the things is that a lot of what we have said in the past based off of intuition.
Some of
and
it
what seemed very obvious. Some of it we got right.
Really right, and some of it really wrong.
Yeah. So
I want to break down, because there's some things, I think the sort of crucial piece of information that everything hinges upon is so non-intuitive that without this piece, it's impossible to break it down as precisely as mtgy425 did. And that key is that, all right, so we all, the way we talked about it, base stats, we've always combined attack and health together. Yeah. And it makes intuitive sense that you combine attack and health together to decide that in what's in Injustice 2 called, I think, threat level. Yeah. Which the equivalent, you could use a different term or the same term, but in Injustice Gods Among Us, we've always thought was what determined the assigned opponents. Yeah.
And how much battle points you got.
And you're right. And so your assigned opponent's sort of threat level was determined what your points were. So it was sort of like a 2-link chain.
So what we've learned is the only thing that matters is health and damage. Right. And that does not include stuff from passives.
One notable exception only is Dark Side affecting bronzes. Yeah. That's it.
That one Dark Side that gives plus 300% attack and health to bronze characters. Right. Because that would have destroyed matchmaking otherwise.
So that was intuitive, because we've always talked about characters like that where, their stats and whether they're loaded more towards attack or health, but it was that their base stats combined.
Yeah. As Cameron 107 alluded to, it does not take into account when somebody's passive gives them stats. And that is something that we got wrong. We were under the impression that it did. Right. And that it made fights harder. And we were just straight up incorrect about that. Right. So that is our bad.
But we were right too in talking about how crit chance and crit damage did not. How things that affected one aspect of attack didn't make a difference. Like if you had a special boost but you didn't have a basic attack, or you had basic attack boost but not special, that didn't make a difference. But, it came down to the health part.
But there is one piece of information which is like transcendent. Yes. This piece is like so cool, which is that, so for each character, you add up their health and attack to find their sort of like total like stat pool. Yeah. And the way that it adds up is the top character, the highest stat, the biggest number, counts more.
It counts for 6 times as much as the middle stat, or the lowest stat, and the middle one counts 3 times as much as the lowest stat. Yeah. So this weighting is what allows you to do the precision.
So the top guy counts for 60% of your total rating. Yeah. The middle guy counts for only 30%, and the bottom guy counts for only 10%. So you sort of add up their health and attack, and you multiply the biggest number by 0.6, the middle number by 0.3, and the lowest number by 0.1 to get your total score.
Right. And I mean, it is sort of arbitrary, because depending on whether you just multiply it by 6, 3, or 1, or 0.6, 0.3, or 0.1, all it does is change the ranges. In terms of how you weight it, if you didn't have that, though, you can't make the calculations to decide what the ranges represent, because otherwise you'd be potentially, when you make a minor tweak of the character who's the lowest stat or the highest stat, it changes completely how big an impact it has on what your team threat level is. Because, all right, so the intuitive part that's obvious is the health and attack. Figuring out the ranges, that's just grunt work. But that grunt work is completely predicated on the idea, and so that if you're not wasting time just looking at it, on knowing how those numbers on your 3 team members combine.
You have to like extract the formula out of it based off of only the final product without even knowing what the variables were. So we don't know exactly how this user did it, but incredible work. And that is so useful, right? And this is really important in informing how you make teams. I mean, I think they go into an even more detailed sort of description of how you can use this to your advantage and what like the practical outcomes are. Yeah. But like, functionally speaking, you can figure out exactly what stats you need to hit maximum battle points, and you know what the sort of weighting is when you are picking your team. So if everybody's at approximately the same stats, the reason why the enemy teams end up more balanced is because the, average is basically just the same as each of their individual stats. And when you have like one crappy person, the reason why it doesn't make all the enemy teams that much worse, and it doesn't make your battle points that much worse, is because they're only contributing 10%. They're only contributing, 1/6 as much as your biggest guy. Right. So a balanced team is balanced, and then one really sort of weak character doesn't move the needle nearly as much
as having 2 weak characters.
Yeah, 2 weak characters moves the needle way more, right? Because the middle guy is worth half as much as the biggest guy.
Right.
So yeah, having 2 weak characters and 1 strong one is a lot. Having 2 strong characters and 1 weak character is not that different in terms of who you're fighting than having 3 strong characters.
Right.
And then having everybody balanced. So yeah, you'd fight the most unbalanced teams by having 2 really bad characters and then 1 really good one.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the other, I mean, you can go into the weeds a little bit. Some things are more obvious. The precision with which you can calculate how much battle rating you're going to get, each time battle points you get, is absolutely brilliant. Some of the intuitive stuff that was obvious to us is anything that or Astro Harness is what slows down the fights. And you can get a sense of that from the way you fight.
Yeah.
The Arkham Knight Batgirl saving per match, or like saving her teammates, that makes a difference. The Batman Ninja Catwoman being saved by Batman Ninja teammates. Yeah. Again, that was obvious too. And any kind of resurrections. But some things had made a bigger difference, right?
Yeah, but it's just that it's like a thing of beauty. It's color coded. I genuinely, like, we are talking about it, but you need to see the original. Seeing is believing with this. Yeah. It's exceptional.
There's certain things that I mean, listen, if you're just playing and you're just trying to get by, you don't need this information. It's not required. But if you're looking to really play this thoughtfully, this kind of, again, scholarship, there's no better word for it.
They're Neo. They can see the Matrix. They're looking at the code. They've like reached in and just pulled out like the beating heart of like the matchmaking system. Yeah. And it's just so cool.
It would be enough just to have the insight for how the threat level's calculated. Yeah. And a lot of the stuff that we take for granted in the paper that mtgy425 has done is stuff that we just assumed we knew, we figured we knew, and we ended up being right. But being able to do this, like certain things that were obvious to us, right? Mm-hmm. What did I say? The combination?
The combined health and attack, yeah.
Right? That as you went up the ladder, it would just add value or threat level to your opponent's team. Yeah. And that and sometimes it would make a mistake and accidentally give you an opponent that was not quite right for that. Yeah. And it was the opponent's threat level that determined how many points you got. Yeah. Right? I mean, those things we sort of already knew, but this...
Yeah, I mean, we knew because you could have one team that got different battle points as you progressed.
But this is foundational. Yeah. And I think their plan is to do something regarding Survivor. But I think once you already get to this point, once you've made that big jump, that 6-3-1 ratio, I think it unlocks a lot of what you can understand about other elements of the game where there's matchmaking involved.
I like to think that we are a relatively large repository of injustice knowledge. Mm-hmm. And I also, I would look at the, not the subreddit, but the wiki. Yeah. And the degree and level of detail of information collected there and go, wow, there are people who've collected more than this. And like seeing this, it just feels like any one other thing I've seen in terms of like effort and like just quality of final product has been totally blown out of the water. Yeah. Like this is an amount of like effort and polish that none of our content has had and none of our content will ever have. Exactly. If you like the kind of nerdy numbers discussion that we do, there is no way you will not like this. Yeah. I'm glad that they do not make a habit of posting YouTube videos because we would be.
I wouldn't mind. I would watch those.
Yeah, that's the problem. But I feel like it's our niche, but better.
Yeah. No, but I wouldn't mind. I mean, it's not.
I was joking. Obviously, I welcome them to
with open arms
to create content. I think it's we don't lose anything by someone like this existing. We gain something. I think that it's just moments like this make me really sort of proud of like
the community
of this like weird little community, because I've always seen like stuff online about these little sort of really like sort of tight-knit communities where they're small and you see sort of people put in like a ton of work into something that, you know, doesn't matter to most people, but matters a lot. And it's not that, you know, it's like the only thing that matters to these people, but it's like that you can find something and make it matter.
Right.
And this is cool. This is like somebody really finding something and making it matter.
Yeah.
And I find those stories really sort of cool and heartwarming and touching when I don't care at all about the subject.
Yes.
And this is real. This is my front door. You know.
All right. So when you say that, you know what it makes me think of?
What?
My Little Pony and the Green Room. Like that kind of stuff. So I don't care about My Little Pony.
Jenny Nicholson.
Yeah.
The Last BronyCon. That's an exceptional video also.
I don't care about My Little Ponies. I care about that video. That video was absolutely brilliant in the same way that you're talking about, where it's a niche. It's clearly of value to some people. It's clearly the value of this person. And they made a story around it that was so compelling that it didn't matter that I was not part of that community.
Yeah, it's like Defunct Land, who will do stuff about like Disney parks. You watched his video about lines and queuing. And
yes,
Disney
right.
Fast Pass.
Right.
Exceptional. He's a wonderful documentarian. There's some real sort of cool people who make really cool niche content, and I count mtgy425 among them.
Yes,
it's a high honor. It's the biggest honor I can bestow upon an Injustice content creator. Truly the best of us.
That's right. Yeah, unironically.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I say that kind of jokingly, but I mean it.
Yeah.
It's a compliment through and through. I'm not.
So I'm going to link both the thread and I'm going to link the original guide. And you need to let them know in that thread when you've read it and you appreciate it, let them know that you do. Because
let them know we sent you. No.
Yeah. Well, I can't remember the last thing that was this sort of mind-blowing about
it's cool. It's really cool, man. Yeah. It's hard to talk about it because it's just so cool. Anyways, I think that does it for this week. To finish up, I'd like to give a shout out to Eliza Shenaniganizer Caton. She's a hooligan, a buffoon. This shout out was brought to you by Old Timey Slang.
Hooligan and buffoon.
Okay. Shenaniganizer.
Okay, I'm not even going to ask. I don't think we've got time for that.
And we'd also like to give a huge thank you to all the lovely folks who have supported us on Patreon.
That would be Bombo Ben, Consul Peasant, and Edwoon at the top tier last word. Sinemac and Mohammed Albshaiti at the Your Message Here tier. Shawn Farrell, Daniel Simonson, Aaron Maule, Michael DeVries, Brandon C., Irvin Ruiz, Eddydoo, and Hoshi 127 at the credited level. And Chris Wolf, Scarlet Danny, Awesome Gamer 241, Pavu RS, Gavin Malott, and Isfar E at the gratitude level.
Thank you so much for your support, and thanks so much to all of you for watching. And thanks to mtgy425 for your incredible work. We'll see you next time.
Komoda.